Hi, Rebecca. Um,
Hello.
I was hoping that you would be able to use to maybe share a little bit about your backstory. I think what I'd like to sort of know and understand is sort of how have you how has your voice been impacted through what you've been through, and then maybe how are we here today having this conversation about Monadical creating a
Yeah.
voice agent to help you out.
So in 2015, I was diagnosed with a very rare cancer called adenoid cystic carcinoma. It, um, it affects a very small percentage of people. So I was only 39. I had um, some side effects for 3 years, but because of my age and being in really good shape, doctors didn't pick up on it because they didn't know about the cancer, because it's so rare, and didn't think that it could be a possibility. So that's why it took so long, and unfortunately, this happens to a lot of patients like myself. So, um, unfortunately, I didn't find out I had cancer. I had to have something called a maxillectomy, where they removed half of my upper jaw. And I did have something called a fibula preflap reconstruction surgery, where they took up my fibula bone and put it in my jaw. Uh, and then they also took some nerves and connected it with tissue. And so I did actually have the whole area reconstructed, but unfortunately, I developed something called a fistula, and a small hole opened, and then unfortunately during radiation it got bigger and bigger. So now I kind of something about that big on the roof of my mouth. So I sound like this because air escapes through my nose. So that's the somewhat shortened story of how I am where I'm at now. It's been almost 10 years, and I'm still living with a lot of the impacts of this cancer. Um, so I guess this is sort of where Monadical comes in now. Would you like me to tell you more about that, or do you have other questions before?
So, okay, so I guess what I'm hearing is, you were diagnosed with this cancer. You were supposed to have a reconstruction. Something ended up happening through just the impacts of radiology, through just sometimes unfortunate side effects of cancers, and yeah, exactly, bad luck. And so, of course, it has impacted your capacity to speak. Not so much your capacity, well, yes, your capacity to speak, but also it's more of a challenge for others to fully comprehend what you're saying because of your impacted speech. So I'm curious to know, how did it, I mean, you mentioned also in previous conversations that you used to do some public speaking. You're young, you have children, so obviously you spend a lot of time, around other parents, around teachers, I'm assuming with doctor's appointments, both for yourself and for others. And also, you're healthy, you're in recovery, you're working. So I'm curious to know sort of what some of the day-to-day challenges, assuming you have some, what some of those day-to-day challenges are, and where you think that, having a voice agent would be helpful for you.
Yeah. So I used to do a lot of more public speaking than I do now. I was the executive director of a small nonprofit prior to the cancer. That's what I was doing at that time. And, I was told that I was going to go back, be able to talk, be able to sing. I used to love musical theater. And I can't do those things like I used to anymore. I get winded. Some people understand me, some don't. Even at bedtime when I read to my children, they understand me, but it can be really exhausting to read. And also, um, I hold the side of my nose, which if you asked me 10 years ago if I would be caught then doing that, the answer would have been no way. I'm not doing that. But I've adapted. Um, I've tried prosthetics and they're not for me. They don't work that well and they're not comfortable. So, yeah, I mean, holding your nose while you're reading and trying to flip pages, and then or to want to put my arm around my child while I'm reading it, and it's very difficult to do that. So that, yeah, I can't necessarily do the same work I used to. I was in public relations before. I don't have the same confidence either. I used to be really outgoing. And now when I'm around people I don't know or other moms I don't know, like, I don't know if they're judging me. I worry that my son's classmates might eventually judge me. I don't know what other people are thinking, and I don't know if they understand. So sometimes it can cause some anxiety too. It's like, is this person just staring at me because I don't know what I said, or they got it and there's not much to follow up with, like, so yeah, there's just those levels of discomfort now that I didn't have before.
Yeah, okay. So sort of a day-to-day impact also.
Oh, yeah.
Like on a micro level, but also on a macro level, if you think about work, if you think about the extracurriculars that you were doing, the types of, day-to-day engagements, and then, as sweet and as simplistic as just reading your child a book. So
well, even just like I said, I didn't say that like just making a phone call is challenging, and it's also some days really upsetting. Because even though I know people don't mean to hurt my feelings, it is really hard when someone blatantly, just outright says, I don't know what you're saying. Or you sound like you're in a wind tunnel, or you're muffled, or, or like they think that I'm on speakerphone, so it's my fault, and sometimes I do lose my temper a little bit, and then I feel bad after. I have had to apologize to people for, there's been a couple times where I sort of lost my cool on the phone because of what someone said, and then I said something not that nice, and I've had to call back because of it. I generally am a good person and say I'm sorry, but I was just upset with what had happened, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.